Sup, welcome back to the Void. It's the disembodied voice of Beth here. So I started this drawing, and partway in I thought it might be a nice idea to record it, so we can chat a little throughout. I'll share some tips if I see anything I do that might be helpful, and of course, I'll ramble and take you along on this ride with me. So it started out as a random fairy sketch, and I mainly liked how the figure turned out, and so I decided to play around with the design. The design all branched off from me drawing the melting candle in her head, and from there more ideas popped in. Of course, the candle makes me think glow, which led to halo, which then led to, hey, maybe I can make this a weirdo angel. So that's what we're working with here. So right now I'm doing a slightly cleaner sketch so I can make an even smoother line art. Well, for the most part. Once I get to the next section, you'll see that I intentionally sketch extra lines along the line art, making it a little more sketchy. But instead of rough, scratchy sketches of a rough draft, the intentional sketchy lines are created to be straighter and more purposeful in terms of where I place them. I have a hard time explaining this part of the process to you because at this point, this technique is something I sort of eyeball. In my head, it adds a touch of movement and almost a grungier or grittier look to go with my edgier drawings. But the sketchy lines only really look good to me if I'm using a lot of hatching within my piece, so that way everything blends together and looks consistent. I like adding sketchy lines on things like hair, feathery wings, and on parts of the outline where I feel like it looks good, which is not helpful advice to you if you're a beginner, so I do apologize. So my lining process is equal parts neat, but also still kind of a mess, you know. The transform tool is probably my biggest friend. Anytime anything looks slightly off, I select the problem area with the lasso tool and then adjust as needed. Is it kind of lazy? Maybe. But do I look like I want to redraw shit over and over? No. I have too many things to do, so I will take as many shortcuts as I see necessary. It makes you no less of an artist if you make some adjustments this way. I used to think stuff like this was evil. No copy-paste, no patterns, no short adjustments. I had to draw everything by hand or I was a bad artist. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way if that's what you like, but for me, I have too many other ideas and projects to take on, and I don't like to make the process unnecessarily long. Because here's the thing, both results look good. And as long as you're obviously not tracing other people's work or completely copycatting other artists, you're fine. Use your own resources and reference other art for learning new techniques and whatnot. I encourage finding multiple favorite artists of yours to practice their style, giving credit if you do copy a piece of theirs merely for practice purposes, of course. I've done that with my favorite mangas. I'd never post them because I felt weird about it, but I'd try copying my favorite panels and art styles until I got the techniques down, and then I was able to apply that to my own style. And that's key here. You reference or copy other art on the side to learn how the artist creates that line work or coloring you love so much. And once you have it down, then you can twist the technique into something unique to you. Because really all our styles are just a mishmash of our favorite art styles, isn't it? But again, if you post art pieces from someone else that you copied, like for practice or what have you, make sure you give them credit and explain that it was just for practice, and that it does not belong to you. You can always check with the artist too if you want to make sure they will be okay with you posting stuff heavily referenced from their work. Just know that you have to be okay with it if they tell you no. Please respect the original artist and their work. Now, where I start lining the candle is when I realized my canvas size was probably too small. If you want to sell prints of your work especially, you'll want larger canvas sizes so that your art is crystal clear. The max my iPad can manage is about 13 inches, otherwise it will lag. 3,000 through 4,000 pixels is a pretty good range. I felt like I was kind of past the point of no return with mine, so I just left it as smaller size and kept on. I think maybe this canvas size was about 7 by 9 inches or something, in case you were curious. I like to vary the thickness of my lines, adding more depth to a piece. I'm personally a fan of dark shadows. I wasn't super sure what to do about her stomach cavity when I started coloring it. I was trying to think of maybe like why it existed or its purpose, because sometimes that helps me think of how the coloring should look. Since angels are celestial, I did go kind of basic, thinking like a starry night sky would kind of be cool, like her insides were infinite or contained their very own universe, like some warped Teletubby, I don't know. Bottom line, that's why I went with a starry night look for her stomach. I wasn't super happy with it at first, and I did eventually go back to work on it more again. My other issue I ran into was that I was feeling too colorful. I don't like using a huge variety of base colors. Usually when I shade, I'll add more colors and stuff. But this was feeling like too much, so I kind of abandoned my palette options that were off to the side, and I instead try focusing on trying to simplify the colors I have while also making sure I have repeating colors throughout the piece so nothing stands out in an awkward or displeasing way to the eye. Sometimes this takes zooming out of your piece and just staring at it. I can usually tell when something looks off because I keep thinking, I don't like something about this, so what the hell is it? So I zoom out and stare at it. Don't be afraid to talk to yourself. I ramble out loud about stuff going on in the piece, just to myself, and eventually that sometimes helps me pinpoint the issue. Then I ask myself, okay, so how can I fix that? Sometimes that requires starting something over, which does suck, but you'll be a lot happier with yourself and the end result if you bite the bullet and do it. You'll be grateful you took the extra time so you can enjoy your hard work at the end of it all. If you want to know why I ended up choosing the colors I did for this, well, I just like cool tones. Blues and purples tend to be my favorites. Oh, and that's the other thing. So for shading, you probably noticed I shaded with purple at first, then changed the hue to a very dark purple. This was because I wanted to make the layer an overlay. It's different than just lowering the opacity of a layer, because the overlay colors melt in with the layer below it, versus lowering the opacity, which almost looks foggy. I'm not sure how to explain it. Just to me, visually, overlay is more appealing, and the colors look a little bit brighter. The purple was too light for an overlay, though, which is why I ended up making it nearly black. I love pattern overlays. I've made a bunch of my own patterns that I like to use to add a little extra texture to my work. The swirls seem to be fitting for this angel because it matched with the swirly look on her stomach, and I also end up adding that into the background. I don't color the eyes one by one because I wanted them to have close to identical colors and sort of patterns like where I laid down each color. If I were to fully shade them one at a time, I would lose some of my base colors. And if you notice, I keep coloring the same pattern on each eye to keep it a little consistent. This is again easier if I color them in order with each shade I pick so everything melds together. When it comes to things such as the eyes, I like them all to look relatively the same since they are all the same color. This process gets messed up when I go one by one, and I end up with each eye having a slightly different color scheme or shading design, which again can just make the piece look a little awkward or even muddy in my opinion. I forgot to record the tail end of this drawing process, so I do apologize, but here's the finished piece. The end result is a little loud, so I have mixed feelings about it. It was fun to draw though, nonetheless. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.